Good news on the vaccine front. On this episode of Shareable Science Beyond the Blog, we'll look at what the news actually tells us and what it doesn't. Welcome to Shareable Science. Science you can share. You could almost hear the global cheer this week as drug makers Pfizer and BioNTech released their interim results on the phase 3 clinical trial of their COVID-19 vaccine. We'll talk about that data in just a second, but first let's remind ourselves of what their vaccine is and how that clinical trial was set up. This vaccine is a partnership between drug makers Pfizer and German drug maker BioNTech, and it's an mRNA vaccine. That's a new category of vaccines. And essentially, the vaccine itself contains small molecules of genetic information called mRNA. These are instructions, and when the mRNA is inserted, it's taken up by the human cells. The cells read the mRNA just like they read their own genetic information. It's a recipe, specifically a recipe that tells the cells how to make a specific protein found on the SARS-CoV-2 virus. In this case, it's the spike protein. So the cells, our human cells, make the spike protein. They release that spike protein out into the environment, and other cells actually pick that up. And some of these other cells actually pick it up and then present it on their cell surface. So they are presenting cells. And these presenting cells are then looked at by specific parts of our immune system that scan through from cell to cell and look for anything that's being presented and ask, is this part of my own self, or is this something that's not me? Is this something foreign? And so they identify the spike protein and they say, this is not me. We need to build an immune response. And they activate the immune system to create and activate the cells that produce antibodies and the T cells that are involved in the killing response. So this whole process goes from the mRNA instructions for the spike protein to generating the immune response so that the body is prepped so that if you encounter the virus, your immune system is already ready to stop it so that it doesn't take a foothold. So that's the concept behind an mRNA vaccine. And this is not the only mRNA vaccine in clinical trials. There are other mRNA vaccines as well. They're useful because you can quickly develop the vaccine and you can also quickly ramp up production of large amounts of the vaccine. An important point we'll come to in just a second. So the clinical trial, the phase 3 clinical trial, follows this general approach. Thousands of individuals are recruited into the trial. Remember, phase 3 trials are designed to ask two questions. Is this effective? Does it protect against what I'm trying to protect against? And does it have a safe approach? Are there safety concerns I need to be worried about? So you're looking at tens of thousands of individuals, more than 40,000 volunteers for this particular clinical trial. And then they're randomly divided into two groups, and the participants don't know what group they're in, and the study coordinators don't know who's in what group. Half of them actually get the vaccine, and for this vaccine, it's 2 doses given 3 weeks apart. The other half, or the placebo group, they get 2 doses of salt water, so they're your control. And then you wait, and you follow up, and individuals that develop symptoms associated with COVID-19 come in, they get checked out, they have a COVID-19 test. And then you look at the data, and essentially you are looking at the number of individuals that get COVID-19 in the placebo group, and here I've colored them in red, and comparing them to the number of individuals that get COVID-19 in the vaccine group. The idea being you're going to see fewer people in the vaccinated group. The Food and Drug Administration has set the minimum threshold of 50% effectiveness in order for them to approve a vaccine. So it needs to reduce the frequency of COVID-19 by 50% in the vaccinated group. And I've shown you that here. I've got 4 individuals in the placebo and 2 individuals in the vaccinated group. So that's the process of the clinical trial. So Pfizer released interim results of their data on November the 9th by press release. And you've heard me talk about the challenge of doing science by press release because there's a lot of information we don't know. So we clearly have to wait for more details. But here's what we do know. Up until this point, there are more than 43,000 people that have participated, have enrolled in the Pfizer BioNTech clinical trial, and more than 39,000 of them have received both doses, either both doses of the placebo or both doses of the vaccine. When the Data Monitoring Safety Board unblinded the data for that small group, they found that there were 94 confirmed cases of COVID-19, and the majority of those were in the placebo group. We don't know the exact number, but Pfizer says the vaccine has a 90% effectiveness rate. That is a best case scenario. I think a lot of people were looking for something and would have been happy with something in the 60 to 70% range. This is really fantastic. Again, there's a lot of stuff we don't know, but if this holds true, this is really good news. And not only good news for Pfizer and BioNTech, but good news for lots of other vaccine makers as well, because they also, like Pfizer, have created an immune response to the spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So this information suggesting that it is effective in generating an immune response might be useful across the board. This clinical trial will end when there are 164 total cases between the vaccinated and the placebo group, and when half of the participants have been monitored for 2 months since they got their second dose. So this is our effectiveness question. This is looking at our safety question. Now, does this data, as nice as it is, does that mean that you're ready to go out and drink a bottle of champagne and run around without your mask and hug random strangers? No, that is not what this information tells us. There are many more questions that still need to be answered, including, what's the duration of protection? Is this going to last us 6 months, 18 months, something completely different? Does this vaccine protect against all illness, only mildly ill people, or individuals that are much more seriously ill that often end up in the hospital? What level of protection does this provide? And then similarly, does this protect us both against getting ill and spreading the virus if we get infected? Or does this only give us protection against getting ill, but we're still able to spread the virus? Some of the early animal data actually suggested it might have protection against illness, but still allow you to spread the virus. We'll have to see. We also don't know if this protection extends across the age range. So are older populations that are at the highest risk of serious illness protected in the same way as younger individuals? And we're beginning to see clinical trials start that are enrolling people under the age of 18, so we'll soon get information about the youngest populations as well. Then there are some key concerns about the availability. Pfizer says that if this receives approval, they'll have about 30 million doses available by the end of this year and 1.3 billion doses throughout 2021. That's a big number, but that is nowhere near what is necessary to cover the global populations. So as we've said in the past, multiple vaccines are going to have to be approved in order to reach the people across the world that we need to reach. And mRNA vaccines have some specific challenges in terms of how they are stored and distributed. They have to be kept at minus 80 degrees Celsius. That's minus 112 Fahrenheit. That is really cold. That's not your typical refrigerator or freezer. So we've got to think about, if this is approved, how we appropriately distribute this at those cold temperatures and how we maintain the integrity of the vaccine. This also does not mean that we have rounded the corner and that we are now days away from coming out of pandemic. We have weeks, if not months, still ahead of us. So this is good news, but I would keep the champagne still on ice and remember the importance of mask wearing and social distancing. We still have a ways to go, but this gives us a really good reason to smile. I hope you find this useful. If you know individuals that would like to go beyond the 90% effectiveness headline with this, please share this video with them. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Shareable Science Beyond the Blog. Take care.